Now, with spalted wood, you always end up with little voids and things like this that that'll have to be repaired. What I've done is I've just taken really fine sawdust and rubbed in these places really good, and used a water thin super glue and soaked it down really well so that the super glue absorbs into the sawdust, but it also absorbs into the thing itself. And I do that for the larger voids. These little areas right in here that you see, what I'm going to do with those is I'm going to use some tung oil. I'm going to put over the whole thing, and then I'm just going to sand. But I need to go back first and hit over all this super glue with my gouge, and I'm just going to use like a scrape, a shear scrape, and I'm just going to scrape the whole thing and just knock off this sawdust here. And we're going to get started doing that right about now. Get this thing right up here. Alrighty. Right, safety glasses. Notice I have the face closed. Very fine. I'm not trying to cut anything. I'm just scraping. You want to just hold it to the piece. Don't try to force it. Don't try to push. Okay, it looks a lot better up there. Alright, well, I'm going to get my tung oil, and I'll show you how I do the rest of the repairs with that. Got all my super glues nice and leveled out. But now I'm going to go back and I'm going to fill in all those other little voids. I'll be back in just a second once I get set up to do that. Alright, I'm just going to use some tung oil on this thing. The spalted wood will really soak it up. I'm just using tung oil I got at Lowe's or Home Depot 1. And put it on really liberal. Don't be stingy with it. What I like about the tung oil, and you could use any oil for this if you wanted to, any oil that you want to use. What I like about the tung oil is it's so fast curing. I'll be ready. This thing will be ready for finish in an hour or so. Yep, don't be stingy with it. Get it on there really good. I'm just going to put it over the whole thing, and then I'm going to go straight to sanding. It'll really help bring out the colors in this too. I just love the look of oil. The tung oil is sticky. And what it'll do is it'll grab all this little sawdust and it'll move it into the small voids, and it'll stick it until the finish is put on, and the finish will stick it even more. Alright, there's that. And while it's still wet, I'm just going to start sanding. Kind of stand to the side a little bit so that don't hit me in the face with all the tung oil. Clean it off. Alright, I'm good now. I'm just going to start sanding. I'm at about 100 grit right now. You'll see all this slurry. It'll start moving into these voids. Smooth that whole surface out really nice. And I'll go all the way down through 400 grit with it. You're just gonna do all your normal sanding with this, and the surface is already much smoother. This is where all of the voids and stuff were right here. But I just want to take my sandpaper and go back with the grain and make sure there are no tool marks left. Remember, your heavy grits are the ones that does the work. Your fine grits are just for smoothing up for a finish. So make sure you use your heavy grits to get all your tool marks out. And as you come through and you sand, make sure you get all your marks out. And that sandpaper will leave its own scratches. But what you want to do is just your next grit will take out those scratches. And so on until your scratches, say 400 grit scratches, they're so small you won't be able to see them through the finish that I'm going to use. I'm using a lacquer on this piece here. But you just want to go back and make sure you sand with a grain really well. And I'll do this all the way up through 400 grit. Get this thing knocked out so I can start spraying my finish on there. That's when it really starts looking good. It looks kind of crappy right now, but once the finish gets on it, I'm hoping it'll look really nice. Just make sure all the tool marks are gone. You see a little bit of tool marks around through here. I'm just going to keep on going until all of that's disappeared. Then I'll start with my next grit. The better you do your rough grits, the better off you'll be with your fine grits. Because your fine grits won't take out these scratches. You got to get them gone with a heavy grit. Now from here up will be gone. This little cove right there, I thought I would like that, but I don't like it. So at the top of the cove right here, that's gonna be the top of the vessel. So anyway, I'm gonna go back with my 150 grit here, and I'm just gonna keep on sanding until I get all this done, and then I'll be back in just a few minutes. Alright, well, while that's setting up and curing, I'm going to go ahead and start working on the top. I've got to hollow it out down to about here, because when I was hollowing from there up, I stopped maybe about right there. So I'm going to start hollowing this out. I've already got a hole. My 1/2 inch hole that I drilled is already in there. So here we go. Okay, now I've got the plug cut out. Here it is. Got the plug cut out of there. So all I'm going to do now is blend the two curves together, and I'm doing that with my scraper. Again, I'm just blending the curves together. Feel inside here. Just waxing. Getting ready to wax inside. Alright, make sure we get all the cracks and voids. Make sure there's nothing in there. And all this will really do, and I'll put about 2 coats in here, is if somebody runs their hands inside, it gives a nice finished feel. That's really all I'm worried about here. Not really worried that much about I'm not really worried that much about actually having finish in there. It's just that gives a nice feel. So then we'll buff it out a little bit, and I'll come back and I'll let it cure up, and then I'll come back and do a nice final buff in there. All right. Well, I'll be back. I have to cut this off the mahogany here, so that I can spray my lacquer. Okay, I've blown the whole area clear of dust, and I've got my air cleaner going. Everything's sanded and dust free. I've wiped everything down with a rag. Now I'm gonna go over the whole piece with lacquer thinner. Just to make sure that the surface is ready. Surface is clean and ready to accept the lacquer. So it's picking everything up. going to get ready to spray. Okay. Don't let them tell you that you cannot spray brush and lacquer. Okay. My first couple of coats on this thing is going to be, my first couple of coats on here will be a 50-50 mix of lacquer and thinner. And here they are. The clear gloss lacquer and lacquer thinner. I've already got it in the pot. I've got it about halfway. It's about that deep. So I'll get a couple of good flood coats on here, and I'm not worried so much about runs right now. I just want to get a good thick coat on here that's going to soak into all that spalted wood and seal it up, and then my final coats will all be finishing coats. So anyway, I'm going to go set my air pressure and get everything ready to go, and I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, well, I'm going to be shooting about 30 psi. I've got my little pressure regulator on here. I've got my tank set about 60. I can regulate the pressure down to about 30 here. I also have a moisture filter. You don't want this water coming from your tank, if there is any, to get on your piece. If it does, it can just ruin it. But I have my mixture in here. I'm set for a fairly narrow pattern because I'm going to be spinning. Now, I'm going to get ready to shoot this thing, and I'm going to shoot inside here. It won't stick to the wax, so I'm not worried about that, but I need this edge, and then I'm going to shoot all the way down, and I may make a couple of passes. Like I said, I just want a good flood coat to get this thing sealed up good. So we're going to try our first coat here. And like I say, I'm not worried about runs or anything. I just want to get this really flooded really well to finish. Alright, and I'll be back in a few minutes once that's ready. I'll be back in a few minutes once this is ready, and I'll sand at 400 grit. You see, like right now I've got, you can see the end grain here where it soaked it in. That's fine. That's just fine. That's what I want. I want to get in there and seal it up, harden up, and all of that. Right now I can just wipe the runs off with my finger. But as I go, I'll sand at 400 between most of the coats just to keep it nice and smooth. And the last few coats I won't even have to sand. But I'll be back in just a little while once that cures up. Alright, first coat's nice and cured. I'm just going to go back and I'm going to sand at 400 right here. Very lightly. Very lightly. I'm just knocking off a rough edge. And I'll wipe her down and I'll get ready for my next coat. Paper towel grabs paper towel. Alright. And I'm just getting ready for my next coat. Same mixture, 50-50. This one I won't do quite as heavy. Alright, that one's done. That one's done, and there's not near as much going to soak in on this one as there was the first one. Once it gets to where there's really not any soaking in anymore, then I'll start my final coats. And the way I'll do that, I'll mix it just straight out of the can. I won't even use thinner with it. This is thinned about 50-50 just to help it soak in. Alright, well, be back shortly. I'll be back after a couple of coats and let you see what it looks like instead of showing you each and every one. I'll probably end up doing about 10 coats. As rough as this stuff was, and as the spalted wood, it just soaks that stuff in, so it may take up to around 10 coats. We'll be back in a couple more. Alright, well, I'm getting ready to take the tenon off the bottom of this vase, but I thought I'd take just a minute to show you my vase jig here. I've had a couple of questions about it, and I'm just going to kind of show everybody what it does, how it works. Basically, I started out with a waste block here. I put a tenon on it so it would fit in my chuck back here, and I bored a 1.25 inch hole into it, maybe about an inch deep or so, and I put a 1.25 inch dowel rod in there. Got the dowel rod centered up here, spun it up on the lathe, trued everything up, and then I turned this thing on the lathe. Basically, I've got a shoulder here for screws, and this shoulder here, it's just reinforcement, add more length there. It helps keep everything centered. And I made this conical shape so it kind of self-centers the vases for me. But once this is all trued up, I'll show you how how the vase mounts onto it. Be right back. Alright, now it's all centered up, ends true. Pull the tailstock back, and this goes on it. Tailstock comes up, centered in the little center mark right there. It centers there. Make sure that your vase is cured by now, because if it's not, then you're kind of in trouble. Alright, now then, and pull this up. I'll go ahead and get that tightened up. I'll just bring the screws in to hold this thing in place. You can kind of hear it as it goes into the you can hear it going into the dowel there. And then I'll put pressure on the tailstock. Good pressure on the tailstock, because what happens here is all of this alignment here is dependent on that tailstock not moving. So let's see how she spins. Really nice, really nice. Okay, now as long as I take nice easy cuts down here on this tenon, this thing will I should be able to get the tenon off without a whole lot of trouble. So we'll get started doing that now. Alright, a couple things to remember here. First of all, this is end grain. I turned this thing like a spindle, so this is all end grain. I don't want to get down here too thin and then that thing break off, you know, if I'm trying to get a nice smooth looking bottom here, because it most likely it'll break off up inside, and it'll just be really bad. So I'm gonna cut in, and I'm gonna take my skew and get in there at an angle as close as I dare, and then I'll cup out the bottom. I'll concave it so it sits nice and flat, and then I'll sand it and wax it. Alright, that's about as far as I dare go. So, I've got concave on the bottom. Now I'm just going to use, hope that didn't, no it didn't. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and sand up the bottom as much as I can. Alright, I think that got it. Alright. Now all I have is this little button to take off and this thing will be done. Alright. I'll be right back. Well, alright, there we go. Spalted oak, 11-inch tall vase. It's right at 11. It's about 5-inch, 4.5, 4 3/4 diameter at the largest point. But you know, spalted wood is a big challenge because you always have tear out, or you know, and all that. Try to keep your tools really sharp and use a shearing cut. Which is rubbing the bevel. It's not a scrape. A scrape is where you actually have the face closed. But use a shearing cut and or a planing cut. I think that's what they call it, planing cut. So try to use a planing cut. But these vases are fun, and if you get them really thin, they weigh almost nothing. Or really, almost virtually nothing. But go give it a try. If the vase is too tall for you to turn with your tools, you know, you can cut it. Remember that the light woods they're harder to get the glue joint invisible. You can still see this glue joint here, but a lot of times you can get that edge just perfect. If it was good wood and not really spalted, that would have probably you would probably have a hard time even finding that. Mainly because it's so thin, I cut it with a hacksaw, and that makes that a real thin cut. All the grain matches back up really well. But there's the project. Hope you enjoy it, and maybe you'll make one for yourself. A really good challenge, you know, for somebody who hasn't tried to turn something tall before. I'd like to give a shout back to good old Robbie the Woodturner, one of our fellow woodturners over across the sea over there, I believe in Ireland, and he gave me a shout out the other day, and really kind of humbled me just a little bit because I've always considered him a mentor, and you know, he said some really nice things about me. He's a good fella, and I appreciate it, Robbie. Thanks a lot, and here's back to you. So go check out Robbie's channel. He's taught me a lot, and if you really want to see some unorthodox type turning and some different turnings, eccentrics, you know, off-center axis, multi-axis turning, things like that, he's an expert. Go check out his channel. I'll leave a link at the bottom, and you guys go check him out. Alright, y'all have a good day. See you on down the road.